Good morning. My name is Delaney Johnson. I'm the Soil Science and Conservation Director at Up and Farms here in Jackson, Mississippi. And today I have with me Mr. Walter Jackson. And he's a farmer and he's a retired USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service employee. And he brings an abundance of knowledge and understanding to our subject matter today. And he also farms, and we'll let Mr. Jackson tell you something about himself and where he's located and his thoughts about farming and agriculture and where we're going as a country. Walter, what are your thoughts on just the agriculture and reaching the limited resource operations, small farm productions, and the Inflation Reduction Act? What do you think about how it's going to impact our operations as a small farming community?
Well, that's a big question, Delaney. And first of all, let's start with the agriculture piece first. Agriculture is what feeds the world. Actually, less than 3% of the country farms. 3% of our population actually farm. So 3% of the population is having to feed the other 97%. And so agriculture is huge in that perspective. We realize that the agriculture budget, or USDA's budget, is next to defense, is probably one of the biggest budgets that the administration have to deal with. So there's a lot of arms and legs that are associated with agriculture, and we believe that that is important. You mentioned the small farmer in this.
Yes.
The one thing that agriculture offers the small farmer is an opportunity to make a living from their own property.
Right.
Actually, so by saying that, I mean that a farmer can participate in a global market by producing on their farm and selling their product to a business or to an entity that can take that product and put it with other products of similar quality, and then those products can go out and feed the world. There's a lot of space for farm to market ideas, a lot of space for farmers to grow and produce products and sell them right in the community. Right. There's a lot of space for farmers to provide for their own households and their own families by producing crops and feeding their families.
Right.
The Inflation Reduction Act is important. The Farm Bill offers programs that give farmers an opportunity to improve their landscape, their farms, through conservation practices, through just being smart practices. One of the new things that's out and is the climate smart initiatives, and you see that farmers are learning as they're producing to be more climate friendly or more oriented toward the things that they need to do to keep green material on the surface, on the soil surface, and to be more conservation oriented. So a lot of different pieces to the agricultural sector there, and a lot of opportunities out here right now for farmers to grab another gear, so to speak, and move forward into the production.
That's it. Thank you for that. And also you mentioned that getting the farmers aware and exposed to what their expectations are from the agencies that help provide assistance and technical support. Okay, and by my background in soils, I know we start with the ground first.
Correct.
Soil improvement, soil conditioning, and it's all geared toward carbon footprint, reducing the carbon footprint, and trying to educate what the expectations are to bring the small limited resource producers up to speed on just what those other components are, as what we're trying to reach as an initiative, the Inflation Reduction Act. Then what are some of the things that would need to be conveyed to the producer for his farm in order for him to get his operation in order, in the right condition, and his business profile, that he can be a participant and be competitive as far as his crop production and yield and profitability. What would want to be one of the essential things that he could start out doing to give guidance to streamlining him into being the sustainable farming operator that he would like to be?
Right, that's another good question. I believe that the first thing that we have to do is to get the farmer in the audience, get the small or limited resource farmer in the audience to start with. So I'm a big proponent of the CBOs or community-based organizations that help do outreach in the communities to get the farmer to the audience and introduce them to opportunities that might exist to benefit their operations. That's the first thing I think we have to do, is at least get them in the room listening. Then we have to work with them on a level that they understand on their individual farms. So that's where the farm plan and the conservation plan comes into effect there. That's where the one-on-one time with USDA officials sitting in the office, going over strategies, looking at the land, going back to the soils as you mentioned, and then developing a scenario of what this soil is able to produce. Once we understand what a soil, the capabilities of a particular soil on a particular farm, then we engage the farmer. And when farmers become engaged and understand, this is my property, these are my soils, and these are my limitations, and these are things that I can excel in, I think that it gives a farmer a strong opportunity to be successful on the front side. Then past getting them in the audience and understanding that, going over the farm plan and talking about the alternatives that exist on the farm. Being in a position to interview that farmer and say, what are your goals? What's your plans? What are you trying to do on this piece of property that you own? And once we get an understanding of what a person is doing on that property, or what they want to do on the property, then there's a whole suite of alternatives that we might be able to talk to them about and help. So once we build trust with the farmer by actually helping them, then I think that we get a chance to engage them more. And then the engagement builds relationships. And once relationships are built, trust comes into play, and then I think we're able to help the farmer. But the sky's the limit in terms of the opportunities that the government has. It's just that we need to get the farmer in the audience and get them to trust our business and what we're all about.
Great. And I know you are a farmer. You have acreage that you farm. I know you are a diversified farmer. You have livestock and grazing land, pasture land. And what are some of the things that would help streamline the process of getting assistance to getting a farm started and providing that good quality planning for a land type or land area that might not be suitable, might not be prime, because oftentimes the limited areas, they don't have prime land, but they have land that is suited for something, because we know that in RCS, there's no such thing as bad land. All lands have some suitability, but you just have to match the use with the potential suitability and your future projected plans on what you like to see you envision. So what are some of the things that, as far as the land suitability, the land type, that you would encourage a producer, a farmer that's trying to get into the operation of whether it's livestock, whether it's specialty crops? What would be some of the things that you would first discuss with them.
Okay. Well, the first thing, Delaney, the soil survey is important.
Right.
That is the Bible for production, so to speak.
I agree with you on that.
So when a farmer acquires land or is interested in acquiring property, buying property, or whatever, then the soil survey is the first thing, in my opinion, that a farmer needs to pick up to understand the land use, the land capabilities, and what's out there. Now, oftentimes, small farmers inherit property. And so we have a big segment of that. Land is expensive. Let's just put that on the table now. That we know that land is expensive, and not many small farmers can buy land, buy equipment, and operate and be successful in it and pay for that in a lifetime. Now, passing it on down to generations over time, the land can get paid for in that way. Thankful for USDA agencies that help in the lending process. I want to plug that in there at the same time. But you talked about the land, and we're going to call it marginal land for the lack of a better word.
Yes.
So if a person inherit or purchase some land that can't grow row crops, can't grow vegetables, or can't grow melons or things like that, things that are high valued, easy to sell here in Mississippi. Then there's always opportunities. Our forestry products are important. Our land grant institutions help small farmers in growing things like mushrooms and ornamentals and cut flowers and things like that. There are all kinds of opportunities out there with the seasonal high tunnels and all different kinds of opportunities out there for marginal land. Much of the land is marginal because of the lack of irrigation and the lack of knowledge of irrigation. But now we're able to irrigate some of this land now through micro irrigation or through any other type of irrigation that sprinklers, if need be, on small segments of it. So once we're able to irrigate property, then the value of it, the production of the land, go up. The quality of the land, like you said, there's no bad land. Some lands are drier than others. Some lands have water that don't stay in the land long enough to make a crop. And so with something like micro irrigation, then we could make that land produce some things and give that farmer opportunity to at least make a profit or at least explore some avenues down the line there. But they need to be, again, in the audience of the land grant universities, in the audience of the USDA agencies, and in the audience of the community-based organizations that are all in place to help the farmer make decisions like that.
In other words, as help out there, as information, as reference sources, so there's no question that a farmer might have in assistance that he can't find the information or help that he needs in order to move forward. Okay, we want to move to another part. You have a livestock operation, you have pasture land, grazing land, and the margins or the slope or the elevations on your farm, did that guide you into being a livestock or grass or permanent cover producer versus a row crop producer? What made you decide to go the direction more or less and steer your major part of your operation into livestock and grazing land?
Well, the first thing that drove the decision was my passion for livestock. I grew up on a plantation in the Mississippi Delta, and my parents had animals that we used for food, basically. They had pigs and around, and we used those pigs, for food, basically. So that passion, remembering sitting on the fence and talking to my dad, and he teaching me about the animals, and so the passion drove me to want to own some animals at some point.
Yeah, right.
And then I got a job working for the Mississippi Cooperative Extension Service, and I got an opportunity to work with farmers,
Right.
and my passion increased.
Right.
And now I want to own one. Now I want to be a farmer.
Yeah,
now I want to do what I see other farmers are doing, you know. And now I want to raise my children on a farm, to introduce them to agriculture so that they will understand those things. And so the opportunity came to purchase some property in Holmes County, Mississippi. And this property is basically Loring and Memphis. It's A/B slope type property. So if you know, those lands are also highly erodible. And so the row crop piece was out at that point. And so certain fields were highly erodible, and I could not grow, corn or things like that on that. So my goal then was to produce forages and produce the highest quality forages that were possible for that area that I could sustain.
Right.
And that sustainability piece is something that stayed with me. That's because we could grow out and plant a hybrid Bermuda grass, or plant a high value grass forage out there, and then have to babysit it or fertilize it or really stay on top of the game with it. Or we could take the Bahia grass that grows there naturally and manage it. And what I found over the time, I tried that. I planted the hybrids, and I went with the fertilizers, and I did all of those things. And then I came back to understanding that the grass that grows there naturally, if fertilized properly, if grazed properly, if hayed on time and managed, would produce just as much quality as some of the grasses that I was attempting to produce. Now, I'm not saying that a Bahia grass is a higher quality forage than a hybrid Bermuda grass. We know that hybrid Bermuda grass is going to out yield a Bahia grass. But on my operation, for my needs and for the money, my budget, Bahia grass worked for me there. And so I think it's important that farmers need to understand that sometimes we have to use what God gave us, on the property, and not venture out in all the magazines. They have a magazine for every idea you could come up with. And so you can grab a magazine and learn about a particular grass that grows 4 inches a day and produce this type of yield, and all your cattle are fat. And you can go out and plant that grass and lime your soils and do all these things. And then your financial situation you find yourself in the red more so than in the black. And so I had to learn it the hard way. I was full of knowledge, a young extension agent, full of knowledge, and wanted to put some of that knowledge into operation. And doing that from your hip pocket is not going to cut it.
You won't survive long.
Right. So I learned the hard way.
And you hit a key point is utilize the land resource for what it's suited for, and not try to install or plant, try to grow a crop that will be too expensive for the land capability that it is trying to be applied on. So what you came to realize that we have like 7 physiographic regions throughout the state of Mississippi.
Right.
We have the lush uplands that you were talking about through Holmes County. We have the Blackland Prairie on the east side of the state. We have the coastal plains in the southern and central part of the state.
Right.
And we have the Mississippi Delta Alluvial Valley floodplain on the west side of the state. So you look at cropland, crop fields all as far as you can see as far as Mississippi Delta.
Correct.
But you can't do that up in the lush uplands, up 55 north and south, like going through Holmes County. So you try to apply the right type of land use with the type of land capability class. And with that, you see where you can find that balance to develop an operation, make an operation, livestock, grazing land, pasture land, and still conform with the capability that the land has to offer. And that's wise farming, because the land area dictates pretty much what you're going to be able to use it for, and then be able to have a successful operation. Okay, with that, the practices that the agency have assisted you with, what are some of the practices that you really fond of, or you really support, or you really think just is the right balance for the operation that you have? Some of the conservation practices that you have installed on your farm.
Right. So any livestock and haying operation, combination of livestock and haying operation of, I'm going to use the term beef cattle and haying operation. The most important practice to me is the one prescribed grazing. Prescribed grazing, where we are allowing foragers to rest for a period of time. It's so important. It's important in terms of the utilization of the forages. It's also important in terms of keeping a sustainable cover on the property, so that you don't get into an erosive situation. So prescribed grazing first is important, but to implement prescribed grazing, we got to have fence.
Right.
We got to have fence so we can move the cattle through grazing sales at whatever rate that's feasible to that particular producer.
Right.
In operations like what I'm doing, I find it easier to move cattle on the weekends. A 7-day operation. So I try to keep my stocking rates and densities to a point that I can move cattle,
right.
On that scale, on those dates. Now, that's the spring, you're going to have lush forages, and you're going to have some excess, or it may take 10 days to get it done.
Right.
And then in the late summer, when the rain stops here in Mississippi, that you may have to be quicker in terms of moving the cattle through that. So fencing and prescribed grazing are two. The next one, because every one of those paddock is going to need water in it.
Right.
And we find that watering facilities and water troughs are key to growing animals.
That's it.
We typically had been watering cattle from ponds, and then a few years back we started to put in these watering facilities. And we found that our cattle love the fresh water. First of all, they love the fresh water. The next thing is it is healthier for them. You see your weaning weights going up. You see your cattle breeding back faster. And then it's just conservation sense, to have livestock drinking fresh, clean water than standing in ponds and wading in ponds and having to drink that water. It's just not a good situation for the livestock, not a good situation for the environment.
Right.
And so we start to move those cattle there. Now, beyond the prescribed grazing and the watering and the fence, on these Memphis and lowering type soils, you're going to get some erosion at some points. So pipes grade stabilization structures are important. So on the farm, there are 3 or 4 of those on the farm that have stopped washes from starting, head cuts from becoming bigger head cuts, gullies, so to speak. So we have some of those on the farm as well. Okay. Now, the agency also helped me to improve the quality of my forages. I mentioned earlier that we were strictly Bahia grass farming. So there is a practice, forage and biomass planting, where we interseed legumes on the land. And these legumes work for several different purposes. It provides the cattle some. We have a spring calving season. Cows are calving right here in January. So it provides us some nutritious grazing right there when the cows need it the most. You know, March come in, we got some clover coming up, and the cattle can use that. Now, when this clover in the early summer, midsummer, when it's gone, then the nitrogen that it's producing feeds the Bahia grass. What's left, it comes up, and the Bahia grass is able to get that nitrogen. Now, that keeps me from having to apply so much nitrogen, so I can be conservation friendly there. I can also save money, you know, in that perspective. And then on the other side, clovers and legumes do a lot for soil health. And so we're building the health of the soil. We are feeding the cattle. We're saving money. We're not impacting the environment by applying nitrogen and having to lose some in the ditches or streams or whatever. So not applying as much nitrogen anyway. So the interseeding legumes helped us along the way.
Exactly.
Now, on the back side of the pasture, you know, that area is inundated with a weed that we typically call broom sedge, you know. And so that's a problem. That's been a problem throughout that region. Pastures get taken over by that, and a lot of that's up to management, and some of it is just we just have a seed bank of broom sedge there that just grows some kind of rapidly. So we were able to get through one of the Climate Smart programs incentives some pasture and hayland planting on a section, and we planted Bahia grass, you know, Bermuda grass and a Bahia grass mix. They're hoping to get a 50-50 balance of both of those forages. And then after it's up and growing well, my intentions is to spray that field for the weeds that might come up. Anytime we till the soil to get a planting, we're going to get a flush of weeds. So once I'm in control of the weeds that grow on that particular place, then I want to interseed that field with legumes as well to bring that pasture to its fullest potential possible without having to break the bank in terms of spending so much money on fertilizer. So those are the key practices that we've done there on the place to cut down on the erosion, to help mitigate some of the cost that we have in terms of putting out fertilizers, and also to move the cattle systematically on the land so that we can rest and rotate the forages. You know, we can rest the forages and rotate the cattle through the operation.
And that's, thank you for that real detailed plan and layout of your farming operation. And we could go on all day, because what you just described, that's a well managed, environmental friendly. It's nothing is what leaves the farm is minimized by your conservation cover, your permanent cover, and then your stopgap structures that would minimize erosional effects. Also, and you have some non-planted areas you just described, like broom sedge, or if the area gets a little wet and moist, then you don't have trafficability from the cow livestock pools of compacting the areas and stuff. So all that are things that really make a difference that are oftentimes overlooked in the management of a whole farming system. You did not just describe one practice, well, cross fencing, well, heavy use areas, well, watering systems, but it's the whole farm. You know, it's not just 1 acre that's practice was applied, but you look at your whole farm landscape, and that's what we encourage. Not just install a practice just on one acre of my farm. I want my whole farm managed, even if it's nothing but just some type of cover, conservation cover, managed by the grasses.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, are there any areas of the farm that you see that may have been damaged, and you saw where the practices that were installed improved that, like you say with the cross fencing, like with your patterns of how you rotate it, that you see something that has been improved condition that was over time.
Certainly. The first one that's recognizable, and particularly in this year, if you recall, we had a severe drought that hit our state here somewhere after the 4th of July, and man, we got to consecutive 100-degree days and broke a record, I believe, for the consecutive days that we were just extremely hot and dry, and most farmers didn't have hay.
Right.
Most farmers did not have hay. By rotating cattle on the land, I had excess forages in some pastures where I could actually continue to bale hay on that land, and so that put me in a unique position to have hay stored forages for my cattle this winter, and also to be able to sell some hay to some producers who were not as fortunate, who may have not been rotating the animals through the operation.
Right. Okay.
So that's one.
Yeah.
And then of course I just cannot stand to see gully formations on property, and because once we have big gullies on property, that property is damaged for years. It takes years to get that property back to our production, sometimes beyond our lifetime, to get it back to where it's supposed to be. And so the 14s or the grade stabilization structures make the place just stay together, but keep the land in place, so to speak, and we don't have the washes.
That's it.
One of the benefits that I see from all of the conservation practices that were installed on the place is the abundance of wildlife that we start to see come on the place. I do lease the place to my neighbors to deer hunt on the place. We have they've killed some really nice deer on the place over the years. It's not unusual for me to see turkey out there on the place, or to see squirrels or rabbits, animals like that. So the place is managed to the point that I always say, if you manage it close to decent, then the livestock and the wildlife will cohabitate and be there together. So that's a thing that I enjoy.
Right.
Just to roll up on the place and see deer, a doe and a fawn out, grazing in the late evening or early mornings. So it makes you enjoy the place better when conservation practices are there. So not just from a profit standpoint, not just from a holding the land standpoint, but from a self-gratification standpoint, when you can look across the property and see the benefits of the conservation practices that you have installed.
Right. Yes, and that's great. And you said you just like to see it's not just money, but that's priceless. You can't buy that.
Correct.
And then the environmental benefits to have wildlife come and be able to take advantage of that conservation work that has been installed, and that is essential to the further and the advancement of what we are trying to promote is water quality, air quality, carbon footprint reduction.
Yes.
All these things that what you have described, that's helping to minimize the environmental benefits. They help to improve the environmental benefits of the whole landscape. And with your operation, then we look and hope that catches on, and we have other neighbors that would try to adopt some of your practices and that you have installed. It's a good demonstration to people that are interested in farming and converting their land into some working type of use. So we appreciate all that information, and we look forward to coming and visiting on site, your farm, and being able to grasp our own personal touch, our own personal exposure to this, because we just encourage this. There are 31 million plus land acres in the state of Mississippi, and we have much of that is in agriculture. but much of that is idle, abandoned, not in any type of use.
Correct.
So what we encourage is to try to get people not as far as farming, but good environmental and conservationists. If we can get all acreage have some type of ground cover on it, that is helping to reduce the carbon footprint as we move forward, and we have a better environment, we have a better water quality, better air quality, and a habitat for just wildlife.
Certainly.
And with that, we have Mr. David Watkins. He's our CEO with Up in Farms, and he'll be talking to you more about some of the other components of your operation. And we really appreciate your coming in today to the studio and visiting with us and sharing that just quality and bundles of information. And I knew you had it because we go back a ways. We go back in our working days and stuff.
Certainly.
So with that, Walter, we just looking forward to hearing some more from you in the future, because I know each year with that type of conservation being applied on your farm, you're going to see continuous improvement, continuous improvements and stuff.
Absolutely.
So we just look forward to it, and thank you.
Absolutely. You're quite welcome. I enjoyed visiting with you today. Looking forward to working with Mr. Watkins.
Okay. Thank you.